Classification of Giardia quickly. Yeah, students. Classification.
Ma'am, kingdom Protista,
Yes.
subkingdom Protozoa,
Huh?
phylum Sarcomastygophorum,
Hmm.
subphylum Mastigophorum, class Zoomastigophora.
Yes, very good. The other question like what are the two important morphological forms we can see during the life cycle of Giardia?
Sister,
Trophozoites
trophocyte,
and cyst.
Yes,
cyst.
tromphozoite and cyst. Tromphozoite is considered as vegetative form, where cyst is considered as the infective form. Can anybody tell me the important parts of the tromphozoite? What does tromphozoite consist of?
Axostyle,
Tell me the number.
axostyle 2, 1 pair, man.
Yes.
Flagella 4 pairs, parabasal bodies 2 pairs, nucleus 2 nuclei.
Okay, very good. So apart from that, you can see the sucking disc also. Okay. So what will be the shape of the tromphozoite?
Tennis
Okay.
racket.
Yes. Now any other can describe about the cyst? The morphology of the cyst?
It is ellipsoidal in shape and it measures around 8 to 12 micrometers in length
Okay.
and 7 to 10 micrometers in breadth.
Okay. Is it Akshata who is answering?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go on, go on. What are the important parts it consists of? Cyst is made up of?
Median bodies.
Okay. Two median bodies will be there along with the, how many nucleus will be present?
2 to 4 nucleus.
Very good. And it is surrounded by the cyst
Cyst
wall.
wall.
Yes. Okay. That is about the morphology of the, I hope you had seen the videos, ma.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
No need to
Yes.
run the video right now. Is this is. And when you look at the life cycle, what is the first step? Yes, read it out. Yes, students. Already it has
Changing
been.
of the cyst via food or drink.
Okay. Next.
Should I,
Within
ma'am?
30 minutes,
Hmm. Hmm. After 30 minutes.
the cyst hatches out into two trophozoites.
Okay. Next.
They, multi- they multiply in enormous numbers by binary fission and colonize in duodenum.
Yes.
They live in the duodenum and upper part of the jejunum, feeding by pinocytosis.
Hmm.
They During unfavorable conditions, encystment occurs usually in the colon. A thick resistant wall is secreted by the parasite. The cystic wall is then divided into two within the cyst wall. Cysts are passed in stool and remain viable in soil and water for several weeks.
Okay. I hope everyone has cleared with these steps and you have written in your notes. Yes, students. So today,
Yes.
I mean, these are the simple steps we can see it in the life cycle. If you just get into the details, some more steps can be included. Okay, so those are not able to follow the content in depth, they can just, end up their answer by writing these steps. But whomever are comfortable, if they want the content in depth, they can go with the extra points which I'll be discussing now. Okay, so we know that Giardia will be completing its life cycle in single host itself. No intermediate host will be there. It will complete its whole life cycle in single host itself. And we know that this will be transmitted by the ingestion of the contaminated food or drink, or if the contaminated hand is kept inside, like children, if they put that contaminate the soil, if they the contaminated soil, if it is stuck to the hands, if they keep the hands into the mouth, that also may cause the infection. Okay, and after that, after 30 minutes or within 30 minutes of ingestion, you can see the cyst will be getting converted into two thrombozoites. Why it is happening? Why cyst is getting into converted into two thrombocytes, which is nothing but we are calling this process as excitation. Yes. So you people also can include some more points with other pencil or whatever is comfortable for you. Okay, so at the second step, you can write it as excitation within the brackets. So as I said, during the excitation, one cyst will be converted into two flagellar thrombozoites. This happens where it happens? In duodenum. It occurs in duodenum. And why it occurs? Because of the acidic environment. This is important, because of the acidic environment inside the duodenum, which is about the pH ranges from 1.3 to, I think everybody are following.
Yes, ma'am.
So the pH ranges from 1.3 to 2.7. So this creates the acidic environment. So how it is created, acidic environment in the duodenum? We all know that due to the presence of gastric juice, as well as the pancreatic enzymes. Please make a note, mark. Due to the presence of gastric juice and pancreatic enzymes like chymotrypsin and trypsin. Pancreatic enzymes, which includes chymotrypsin and trypsin. So due to the presence of these enzymes as well as the juices, the environment inside the duodenum will be acidic in nature. So that's why the cyst, whatever has been reached the duodenum, it undergoes the excitation process and it forms two thrombozoites. Okay. Again, in the same duodenum, they will just multiply to become more number or increase its number by asexual reproduction, that is simply by binary fission. And then they will live in the duodenum and upper part of the jejunum, feeding by pinocytosis. This already we know. And apart from this, they will start colonizing. They will adhere to the, during this step itself, whatever the thrombocytes have been produced, n number of thrombocytes which have been produced, they will adhere to the epithelial cells, or simply we can call it as enterocytes, the lining of the duodenum or the intestine. So they will adhere to the enterocytes. Whatever the thrombocytes have been produced, they will adhere to the enterocytes with the help of, what is the component helping in attachment? Sucker disc. If you look at the structure of the thrombozoite, it consists two sucker discs, the big circles. Okay, so those will be helpful in attachment to the enterocytes, the lining of the duodenum, okay, which is made up of epithelial cells or enterocytes. They will go and adhere to these epithelial cells with the help of sucker disc. And this, how they particularly go and bind to these enterocytes itself. Anyway, it is mediated by sucker disc, helpful to attach to the enterocyte. Sucker disc will be helpful, but how they will recognize those particular epithelial cells. So that will be mediated by very, very important. So this attachment will be mediated by how it will be. That means how it can recognize only the epithelial cells, not the other cells in that intestine. So this is mediated by mannose binding lectin. Please remember, mannose binding lectin. Underline this. Okay. Mannose binding lectin, which will be present on the surface of the trophozoites. So this is acting as the receptor, mannose binding lectin, which will be present on the surface of the trophozoites, which will recognize these epithelial cells, and with the help of the sucker disc, they will attach firmly to these epithelial cells. Got it? Is it clear? Just imagine, okay, they are just entered into the mouth and slowly they are getting into the intestine now, there where the cyst is converted into trophozoites, and whatever the trophozoites have been produced by binary fission, they are nicely sticking to the walls of the intestine, especially to the epithelial cells, by the mannose binding lectin receptors, as well as by the help of the sucking disc. And then slowly few of the trophozoites will pass through the large intestine where encystation will occur. Few of them will be, adhere to the epithelial cells in the duodenum, and few trophozoites will enter into the large intestine. They will enter into the large intestine, and where encystation occurs because of the neutral pH. Because of the neutral pH. Here excistation occurred due to the acidic pH, whereas encystation will occur due to the neutral pH. Encystation is nothing but again the trophozoite will be forming the cyst. Okay. So how does, anyway, due to the neutral pH, whatever the trophozoite has been reached the large intestine, now it will start getting converted into cyst. But how does it know? Anyway, neutral pH will favors that encystation process, but how does the trophozoite knows that it has to get it converted into cyst form? That is, in the sentences it is clearly mentioned, during unfavorable conditions. Apart from that, so specific secretory vesicles, which are called as encystation, ESVS, capital letters, and this should be small letter S. Encystation specific secretory vesicles. Write the full form, everyone. ESVS means encystation specific secretory vesicles will be produced inside the trophozoite once they reach this larger intestine, and due to the neutral pH, these vesicles will be formed, which triggers or which will convey the message to the trophozoites that it has to be converted into the cyst. Is it clear?
Yes,
Again, so that cyst form will be, will be found within 24 hours here. Within 24 hours, you can see all the trophozoites will be converted into cyst form. So how does the cyst form? We know that trophozoite is nothing but the larger pear-shaped structure, which will be converted into small-shaped, oval-shaped structure, which is nothing but the cyst. So what will happening? What is happening actually here? The shortening of the flagella will be done. Okay. So what all the reactions you can see when trophozoites has been converted into cyst? There will be shortening of the flagella. condensation of the cytoplasm will be occur, and cyst wall formation will be occurring. Three important steps here: condensation of flagella, shortening of flagella, condensation of the cytoplasm, formation of the cyst wall. So when these three processes occurs, slowly the trophozoite will be converted into cyst, which is nothing but the encystation process. Okay. So finally, whatever the nucleus present in the trophozoite, it will undergo the nuclear division. As I said, the trophozoite consists of nuclei. So whatever the nuclei has been there in the trophozoite, that will undergo the nuclear division to form 4 nuclei. So inside the cyst, you can see 4 nuclei. Do you observe in the previous slide the structure of trophozoite and the cyst? In trophozoite, we had just drawn only 2 nuclei, whereas in cyst it was 4 nuclei. Yes, so that means nuclear division has been occurred, which will be, in the cyst you can see the formation of the quadrilateral. So when you can see the 4 nuclei, we are calling these cysts as quadrinucleated mature cyst. So during early stage, the cyst will contains only 2 nuclei, but slowly it undergoes the nuclear division and it will result in the 4 nuclei. So that resultant form of cyst is known as quadrinucleated mature cyst. Okay, this will occur in the large intestine. As soon as the mature cyst has been produced, they will be passed into the stool. Got it, ma? So about 200,000 cysts will be released. Yes, again I'm just brushing up all the steps. Ingestion of the cyst via contaminated food or drink, or by keeping the contaminated hands into the mouth. Within 30 minutes of ingestion, the cyst will be transformed into 2 trophozoites by the process known as excistation, which occurs in the duodenum due to acidic environment, which where you can see pH of about 1.3 to 2.7 due to the presence of gastric juices or the pancreatic enzymes like chymotrypsin as well as trypsin. After that, whatever the trophozoites have been produced, they will increase its number by binary fission and colonize in duodenum, and then they slowly adhere to the enterocytes or the epithelial cells present on the lining of the duodenum with the help of the Saccharase. So this attachment will be mediated by mannose binding lectin receptors. Mannose binding lectin receptor, which are present on the surface of the trophozoite, and then slowly they will get into the larger intestine where neutral pH will be there, and due to the unfavorable conditions, what are these? Encystation specific secretory vesicles will be formed inside the trophozoite. As a result, the encystation process will occur where trophozoite will be converted into cyst. So during this conversion, shortening of the flagella will be done, condensation of the cytoplasm will take place, and nuclear division of the nucleus will be taking place, where 2 nuclei will be converted into 4 nuclei by resulting the quadrinucleated mature cysts. So whatever the cysts have been formed, they will be released outside through stool. So this is the whole life cycle of Giardia. Now coming to the pathogenesis. Had you seen this video, students?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Can anybody tell me the steps included in pathogenesis? I said you to watch the video and write down the steps. Yes, ma'am. Nobody has done the homework, I think.
Ma'am, should I tell?
Tell me the name first.
Blessy, ma'am.
Okay, Blessy, go on.
Giardiasis occur from the ingestion of contaminated food with infective cysts. The cysts enter the body through digestive tract. They undergo excision in small intestine and transform into flagellate trophozoites and attach to the surface of the epithelial cells in duodenum and jejunum, feeding on mucosa secretion. This results in causing the malabsorption of electrolytes and nutrients such as glucose, chloride, and lipids due to loss of epithelial absorption surface area. Abnormal alteration of electrolyte secretory responses in human colonic cells. Malabsorption and hypersecretion of the electrolyte lead to fluid accumulation in intestinal lumen. These events break the epithelial barrier, causing inflammation and activate the white blood cells to secrete inflammatory mediators and cytokines.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Okay. So can anybody tell me what is the difference between the life cycle and pathogenesis? Shiva? Yeah, what is the difference between life cycle and pathogenesis? So in the life cycle, we had seen what is the route of entry, how it is undergoing the morphological stages, and ultimately, what type of disease it is causing. But in pathogenesis, we should mostly focus on how it is causing the disease, what type of damage it is creating inside the host cell. Okay, so pathogenesis means it's nothing but how it is generating the disease, how it is able to cause the disease. Those points should be focused under the pathogenesis. So just write down in your running notes. I'll be telling stepwise manner. Are you able to hear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Write down now. Keep the heading as pathogenesis. Trophozoites attached to enterocytes of duodenum. Trophozoites attached to enterocytes of duodenum with sucker disc mediated by what is that? Mannose binding lectin. Yeah, students.
Yes, ma'am.
Trophozoites attached to the epithelial cells or the enterocytes of the duodenum with the help of sucker disc mediated by mannose binding lectin. That is the first step. There itself, within the brackets, write it as, in the first step itself, within the brackets, write it as, trophozoite does not enter into the blood, restrict to intestine itself. They doesn't enter into the blood, restrict to intestine itself. Okay, next point. This attachment, that means attaching to the epithelial cells. This attachment damage microvilli. MICROVILLI. This attachment damage microvilli. Within the brackets, write it as interfere with nutrition absorption. Interfere with nutrition absorption by microvilli. Interfere with nutrition absorption by microvilli. Now coming to the third step, further increases in number, that is trophozoites. Further, the trophozoites increases in its number and causes complete damage of enterocytes. Complete damage of enterocytes. That is the first thing you can see there. Second, villi atrophy. Villi atrophy. VILLIATROPY. Villi atrophy. The third, intestinal hyperpermeability. So it is causing complete damage. The second one, villi atrophy. The third infection or third type of damage you can see it here is intestinal hyperpermeability. As a result, next point, as a result, reduction in disaccharide enzyme secretion. As a result, reduction in disaccharide enzyme secretion. The last point, causes osmotic diarrhea. Causes osmotic diarrhea, within the brackets giardiasis. Within the brackets write it as giardiasis. Okay, I hope everyone had written the steps. Now look at the screen here. So as I said, so what do you mean by pathogenesis? Is nothing but by the cyst ingestion. The cyst is converting into flagellar trophozoites within the intestine, and they are able to attach to the microvilli. These are the microvilli, hair-like structures which are present in the intestine itself. They will go and attach to the epithelial cells or the enterocytes, and they will start damaging the microvilli by interfering with the nutrition absorption by these microvilli. So when they adhere, slowly they start damaging, so that the microvilli are not able to absorb the intestine, nutrients and other minerals from the whatever the food has been taken by that person. And further, it also causes different types of infections here. Okay. Apoptosis, that is the microvilli itself will undergo the self-destruction. Okay, as it is going and attaching to the microvilli will trigger some toxins and chemicals, so that the cells undergo self-destruction. On its own only it will destroy the cells. That is known as apoptosis. And intestinal barrier dysfunction, that means that the tight junctions will be damaged, so that the microvilli are not able to absorb the nutrients from the food, as well as lymphocytes activation. So as a result here, when you look at this stage, as it is damaging the epithelial cells, and it is damaging the tight junctions between these microvilli, they are not able to absorb the nutrients. So that means they are causing some damage here, which is causing the inflammation in the epithelial cells. When there is an inflammation has been developed in the epithelial cells, it will trigger the immune system. At that time, our body realizes that some foreign body has been entered and damaged the cells. So due to that inflammation, the immune system will get activated. That means lymphocytes will get activated, and they will produce the cytokines and other other components to fight against these cysts or the trophozoites, or against the parasite. Okay, and the next one, villi atrophy, that is nothing but villi will be lose that the ability to absorb the minerals, nutrients and other vitamins. Villus atrophy is nothing but it will lose the function of absorbing the vitamins, minerals and the nutrients. Okay, and also ultimately you can see there is a reduction of disaccharide enzyme secretion. The enzymes will not be secreted by these microvilli which will be helpful in the digestion of the food material, as well as in the absorbing the nutrients and other minerals from the food material. So which is again small intestinal malabsorption, that is nothing but the same thing, not able to absorb the nutrients, and increased intestinal rates and anion hypersecretion. That means the whatever the electrolytes have been there, they will not get balanced. So due to that, most of the electrolytes will be released into the stool. Okay, in the step I had given one terminology as intestinal hyperpermeability. That means there will be no control. So when you look at the plasma membrane or other membranes, so plasma membrane main function is selective permeability. That means it is selectively allow only few ions to pass through it. In the same way, the microvilli also will allow only few electrolytes and other minerals to pass through it. So that controlling on the passage of the nutrients and other electrolytes will be disturbed by these parasites or the thrombozoites, which is leading to the intestinal hyperpermeability. Okay, so ultimately you can see the osmotic diarrhea. Osmotic is nothing but release of large amount of water along with the electrolytes. Okay, so this is the main symptom of the giardiasis. Clear my about the pathogenesis?
Yes, ma'am.
So here in this photo you can see these are the parasites which got attached to the wall of the duodenum. Here you can see, right?
Yes.
So this we had completed mode of transmission and also the symptoms. Now to the laboratory diagnosis. So it can be, so how can we diagnose this parasite or the infection? It can be done by 4 type of tests. The first one is stool examination, the next is entero test or commonly known as string test. You need to remember. String test, another is serological test where antigen or antibody can be detected. Antibody, that means in our body against these parasites antibodies will be produced, those can be detected, or antigen is nothing but parasite itself or the thrombocyte itself can be detected by using the serological test, or we can detect by molecular diagnosis where the DNA of these parasites will be detected by using the DNA probe or the PCR technique. So nowadays coronavirus has been detected by using the reverse transcriptase PCR technique, RT-PCR. RT-PCR is nothing but reverse transcriptase. So somewhat same molecular diagnosis will be done for this parasite also. Okay, now coming in detail about these laboratory diagnosis. The first one, stool examination. So here mostly the cysts will be eluted out along with the stool, and sometimes, as I said, thrombocytes also will be there. So this is the best sample to examine the parasite. So I mean you can go with the macroscopic identification. So when you look at the stool sample, it will be giving some offensive odor and it will be pale colored and fatty stool, that means greasy in nature. That is a macroscopic observation. When we stain that stool sample by using the saline and iodine wet preparations, we can examine the cysts like this under the microscope. This is by using the iodine. Simply, if you just with the saline, if you are observed under the microscope, you can see like this. When we add the iodine, you can see the blue color stained cyst under the microscope. Okay, or either we can concentrate this thrombocyte or the cyst by using the chemicals like formal ether or zinc acetate also will be used for staining these cysts which has been there in the stool sample. Right here, the cyst can be, as I said, stool may contain the cyst. Sometimes it may contain the thrombozoites. So you can see the thrombozoites like this and the cyst without staining with by using the zinc acetate or iodine preparations. You can see this is like this. Is it clear? Shall we move on to the next test, students?
Yes, ma'am.
This is very, very important. Entero test, or we can call it as string test. Actually, when you just type it in the Google as string test, string test will be there for the Vibrio cholera also. Vibrio cholera. Okay, so don't get confused between that organism and this organism. So here also the test is known as the entero test or this string test. So this is mostly the method for obtaining the duodenal specimen, or which is nothing but the upper part of the small intestine. So how to go with this string test? A coiled string with a small weighted gelatin capsule is followed by the patient. Look at the procedure. A coiled string with a small weight gelatin capsule is swallowed by the patient, and the free end of the string is attached to the side of the patient's face. So a string will be swallowed by the patient, and whatever the capsule has been there, it dissolves in the stomach, and the string will be weighted at its distal end, passes into the duodenum. Slowly it will passes into the duodenum. After 2 to 4 hours, the string is withdrawn and placed in a saline with mechanical shaking, and the centrifuge deposit of saline is examined. I mean, when it undergoes centrifugation, you can see some sediment. Okay, so that sediment will be examined again under the microscope to detect the presence of the motility of the organism, or again the same thing how we had observed under the microscope when we go with the stool sample. In the same way, you can go with the microscopic observation to detect the presence of the cysts or thrombozoids. So like this, you can see it here in the diagram. So this is the string which is having the gelatin capsule. So this has to be swallowed by the patient, and the other. So once the capsule has been swallowed, the other end of the string will be stick to the face like this, and this slowly the capsule will dissolve in the gastrointestinal tract, and the string will enter into the duodenum region. And this has to be there for 2 to 4 hours. After that, they will slowly remove the string, and whatever the they will dip this saline string into the saline, and that saline will undergo the centrifugation process, so that whatever the sediment they have been collected, they will go with the microscopic observation to detect the presence of the thrombozoids or the cysts. Okay. So this when this test should be performed, entero test is performed when a physician suspects a parasitic infection, when he doesn't found any parasites in the stool sample. First, obviously, this is a simple technique or simple test to diagnose, but if they doesn't find any cyst in the stool sample, then they will prefer this entero test for those patients. As its sensitivity is comparable to duodenum aspirate, it eliminates the need of duodenal intubation. So simply by swallowing the string, you can take out the cyst, and we can examine. No need to insert any tube or anything like that. Okay, that is not, we are calling it as intubation. Intubation means a big tube will be inserted into the intestinal region or the stomach region to take out the whatever the secretions have been there in that region. So that is not required in this case. Simply by swallowing the string, we can detect whether the cysts have been there or not. Is it clear, ma? String test or entero test. They may ask in the short type question. Okay, so you need to be thorough with the procedure. Coming to the serological diagnosis, as I said, we can detect either antigen or antibody. So this mostly will be done again by using the stool sample only. You can go with ELISA or indirect immunofluorescent test or chromatographic strip test. So when you look at this ELISA, what is happening here? The main principle of this test is, you can see it here. First, the wells will be coated with antibodies, and then after that the antigen will be added, and to this secondary antibodies will be tagged, and this to the secondary antibodies chromophore or substrate or the enzyme, conjugated enzyme will be added to this secondary antibody. And if this secondary antibody will go and perfectly binds to the antigen, whatever the substrate or the chromophore has been added, it will be turning to the different color. So once it has been there, it is green color. For suppose if once the secondary antibody has been attached to the antigen perfectly, then you can see there is a color change in the chromophore. By that we can detect that the whatever the stool sample they had took that contains the Giardia antigen or Giardia cis. So this is the basic principle of the ELISA. Okay, or I mean either you can go with the antigen detection or antibody detection. So when we are going with the antigen detection, here you can see on the wells or the matrix the antibody has been coated. To this antigen the cyst or the Giardia will be added, and then to this secondary antibody will be conjugated or attached to this, to which the enzyme, mostly horse horse redox peroxidase enzyme will be added to detect the secondary antibodies. So this is a common detection for the antigen. If we want to go with the antibody detection, instead of coating with the antibody, they will coat with the antigen and then antibody from the sample. That means mostly the blood sample will be taken here. Okay, because the antibody will be produced in the bloodstream of the patient itself. Here the Giardia cyst will be taken as an antigen. Here antibody from the infected person will be added. If that conjugates perfectly with the antigen, so already antigen conjugate will be present in that case. So simply they will add this antigen. Here it is nothing but the Giardia antigen itself. So here they had indicated Giardia specific antigen 65 will be used. So already this will be provided in the kit. So once it has been attached perfectly with the antibody, you can see that, as I said, the chromophore will be changing its color. By looking at that color, we can say that the person got infected. So either you can detect the antigen or either you can detect the antibody by using the ELISA technique, or you can go with the indirect immunofluorescent technique, but most probably we'll just go with the first one, and most probably instead of going with the ELISA, this is the common serological test will be used, which is called as the rapid test or the kit method. So immunochromatographic strip test, we'll see that in detail now. So this is the strip test, where collect the samples from the feces using the swab. Stool sample will be taken. Insert the swab into the 2 sample collection tube and switch the swab at least 10 minutes. That means we need to centrifuge the sample, and then discard the swab while squeezing the swab against the wall of the tube. Whatever the swab we had used, that has to be discarded. Take the supernatant with the disposable dropper. So whatever the supernatant has been formed during the centrifuge, that has to be in the form of droplets. You need to put it on that kit or the small instrument like thing with about 3 to 4 drops. Then by looking at the color as well as the lines which has been got on the instrument, we can say whether the patient is suffering from disease or not. So here positive means you can see the 2 lines has been shown here, whereas negative only 1 line will be there. Okay, like if you know about the pregnancy test, in the same manner this also will be done. Right, if 2 lines have been there, that shows the positive. If 1 line has been there, it shows the negative result. We'll see. I think one video has been there. Just watch this video now, everyone. Is it clear, ma?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just end up the class here. We'll see about the treatment and prevention of these diseases in the next class.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll just take the attendance tomorrow itself. Okay, you can leave now.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, students.
Thank you.